What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin Breeze here, and in this video we're going to be comparing the Umidigi F1 to the Umidigi 1 Max. So without further ado, let's get started. So both of these devices were recently launched by Umidigi, and there are quite a few similarities which we'll go over, but there's definitely a lot of differences. Starting off, the first major difference between these two devices is the price tag. So as of the time of making this video, the Umidigi F1 is available for $219.99, and the Umidigi 1 Max is available for $179.99. So essentially, the Umidigi F1 is $50 more expensive than the Umidigi 1 Max. Now, of course, the current pricing for these two devices might be different based on when you're watching this video, so I definitely recommend that you take a look at the Amazon link in the video description, as you can see the current pricing for these two devices. Now, both devices are available factory unlocked, which means that they'll work on GSM carriers. So in the United States, these two devices will work on AT&T, T-Mobile, Cricket, and Metro by T-Mobile. You'll also be able to use these devices internationally, as GSM is the global standard that's used throughout the world. Unfortunately, these two devices are not going to work on Verizon, Boost, or Sprint. Now, both devices feature 6.3-inch displays, and you can see that holding these two devices up next to each other, they're pretty much the same exact size. Up top here, both devices have a teardrop notch. Which in my opinion is an improvement over some of the notches that we've seen on other devices, such as the iPhone XS, where the notch is a lot wider. So I think the overall design here of these two devices, having that teardrop notch on the top, is really sharp. In addition to that, the overall bezels of these two devices are pretty small here. You can see there's a little bit of a lip on the bottom, but up top it's pretty thin. So overall, I just think the designs of these two devices are just really modern and they look great. Now, the Umidigi F1 features a higher resolution display than the display on the Umidigi 1 Max. On the F1, we have a 1080p display, and on the 1 Max, we have a 720p display. But honestly, holding these two up side by side and looking at them both, I'll admit the F1 has a better display, but both have great displays. The displays in these two phones have great colors, they both look really sharp, and really, with the Umidigi 1 Max, you're not going to be using it and thinking, wow, this display isn't very good. You'll definitely like the displays in both of these devices. You can see close up here, they just both look really crisp and nice and clear. So whoever Umidigi is using as the suppliers of their displays is a really good supplier. The F1 features a 19.5:9 ratio display, and the 1 Max features a 19:9 ratio display. So the display on the F1 is slightly taller than the display on the 1 Max, but they both look pretty similar. With the F1, we're getting a pixel density of 409 ppi, and on the 1 Max, we're getting a pixel density of 267. So definitely the pixel density on the F1 is significantly higher than that on the 1 Max. Now, both devices feature a 16 megapixel front-facing camera, which is really outstanding, and both devices feature 128 gigabytes of internal storage with the ability to expand that storage with a microSD card. On the Umidigi F1, we do not have wireless charging, but on the Umidigi 1 Max, there is wireless charging. So it's definitely surprising to see that the 1 Max has wireless charging, considering that's the cheaper of the two devices. Both devices have fingerprint sensors. On the F1, the fingerprint sensor is located on the back side of the device, and on the 1 Max, we have a more unique fingerprint sensor design, with the fingerprint sensor being on the power button on the side. Taking a look at the camera modules on the rear, the Umidigi F1 features a 16 megapixel main camera and an 8 megapixel secondary camera. And with the 1 Max, we get a 12 megapixel main camera and a 5 megapixel secondary camera. Both of these devices support portrait mode, which is great to see. Now, under the hood, we get 4 gigabytes of RAM with both devices. Now, the Umidigi F1 features a MediaTek Helio P60 processor, and with the 1 Max, we have a MediaTek Helio P23 processor. So the processor on the F1 is going to be a better processor. On both of these devices, video recording maxes out at 1080p at 30 frames per second. The F1 features a massive 5,150 mAh internal battery, and the 1 Max features a slightly smaller but still impressive 4,150 mAh battery. So with the F1, we're getting 1,000 mAh of extra battery capacity. But with both of these devices, you're going to be getting outstanding battery performance and battery life. Another thing to keep in mind is that considering that the One Max has a lower resolution display, it uses less battery power to power that display, so that might be one of the reasons too why it has a smaller battery. Out of the box, the Umidigi F1 runs Android 9 Pie, and the One Max runs Android 8.1 Oreo. So there's newer software on the F1, but I'd imagine that the One Max is eventually going to be upgraded to Pie as well. Now that we've gone over the specifications of these two devices, let's take a closer look at the hardware. So we already went over the displays here. Both devices feature 6.3-inch displays with a teardrop notch on the top, and both devices have 16 megapixel front-facing cameras. Both devices also feature on-screen navigation buttons, and the earpieces are located right above the front-facing cameras. You can also see that the designs of these two devices are very different on the sides and back. On the Umidigi F1, the sides and back are both this kind of dark plastic. Now the material feels good to the touch, so I definitely have no issues with that. But in contrast, the One Max has this really awesome metal band running around the side here, and it's kind of this cool chrome look. And on the back side, this is really cool. We have this blue and purple design here, and it's really reflective, and overall it just looks really sharp and really premium. So out of these two devices, I think the One Max is by far the better looking of the two, and the overall build quality of the One Max feels much better than that of the F1. But at the same time, I'm not concerned about the build quality on either of these two devices, and if you plan on using a case with either of these two devices, then it's really not going to matter what material is here on the back and sides. Taking a look at the right side of these two devices, on the F1 we have the volume rocker and power button. And on the One Max, we have the volume rocker, and we have the power button, which is also the fingerprint sensor. Taking a look at the left side of these two devices, they both have just the door for the microSD card and SIM card. On the top side of these two devices, we just have the noise-canceling microphone, and on the bottom of these two devices, they both have the speaker grill, the USB Type-C port, the microphone, and the 3.5mm headphone jack. Now we already went over kind of the build materials on the back side of these two devices, but on the F1, as I mentioned before, we have the 16 megapixel and 8 megapixel rear facing cameras along with the flash and fingerprint sensor. And on the One Max, we have the 12 megapixel main camera, the 5 megapixel secondary camera, and the flash. Now that we've compared the hardware and software of these two devices, let's now do an unscientific speed test comparison between them. We're going to start off here by loading up the dialer to see which device starts at first. So 1, 2, 3, go. And it looked pretty close for both devices. Now I understand that the F1 is running a newer version of Android than the One Max, but that doesn't really matter for this test because I just want you to see with the current software configurations available for these two devices, which one is faster. Let's now start up the web browser. So this is Chrome. So 1, 2, 3, go. And it looks like the F1 was faster in that test. Let's go to yahoo.com, 1, 2, 3, go. The F1 was faster in that test as well. Now let's start up engadget.com, 1, 2, 3, go. Now it's kind of interesting in that test. The One Max was a little faster. You can see scrolling is really quick on both devices here, so no problem there. Let's now tap on this article. 1, 2, 3, go. And the F1 was faster in this test. Let's now start the camera. 1, 2, 3, go. And it looks like the camera was a little faster on the F1 to start out of these two devices, but both are really quick at starting the camera. Now, which of these two devices do I recommend? Now, it's been great using both of these devices for quite a bit of time, getting to use both of them and really getting a feel for them. And I think there's pros and cons with both of these. As I already went over, I think the overall build quality of the One Max is better than the F1. I just think it's a lot more stylish of a device. But at the same time, I really appreciate how the F1 has a 1080p display with a much higher resolution than the One Max. In addition to that, we're getting better quality cameras and a better processor with the F1. So I think considering that the F1 is only $50 more than the One Max, the F1 is the better choice of the two. However, I think the One Max is definitely a good choice. I don't think it's a bad choice by any means. It's just that Umidigi launched two very good devices here that are very close in price, but it just seems like the F1 offers a lot more advantages over the One Max. But again, it all comes down to your personal preference with these two devices, so I'm interested to see in the comment section below which device of these two you would choose for yourself, or if you're planning on buying one of these two devices, let me know as well. And if you're ready to buy one of these two devices today, then definitely take a look at the links in the video description, as those are Amazon affiliate links, and buying these phones through those links will directly help the channel out, and I'd highly appreciate it. So again, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what other videos you'd like to see me do about these two devices. Make sure to sub to the channel, and I will see you in the next video. Take care and have a great day. Bye.